Honestly, there probably aren't as many people in this world who are genuinely happy as we imagine. Looking back, Jerry was once the kind of guy others saw as a winner in life, at least on the surface. In what feels like a lifetime ago, Jerry was a rising star in the Los Angeles real estate scene. Barely in his 30s, with a sharp nose for market trends and a relentless drive, he carved out a slice of the California dream. 2 properties under his belt. One was a beachfront spot in Santa Monica, where the sound of waves crashing on the shore was his morning alarm. The other, a downtown LA loft with floor-to-ceiling windows, gave him a view of the city's endless flow of traffic, like a river of stars. In his garage sat a sleek black Range Rover and a BMW M4, trophies of his conquests. By his side was his stunning wife, Isabella, with a model's figure and a face like it was chiseled by an artist, the envy of every guy in their circle. Back then, Jerry was young, cocky, and high on success and adrenaline. He genuinely believed this was the ultimate form of happiness, the whole point of his hustle. But beneath that flawless facade was a tangle of conflicts and a gaping void that no designer brands, fancy cars, or wild parties could fill. The weird thing about human nature is we're always chasing the horizon, obsessed with what we don't have yet, blind to the happiness we're already holding. Their fights always started over petty stuff, like Jerry forgetting an anniversary, or Isabella buying a bag he didn't like. But the real issue was deeper. Jerry's heart was a wasteland. Outside of chasing the next big goal, he didn't know how to live in the moment or cherish what he had. His success was like a golden cage, trapping him, making him arrogant and stubborn, deaf to anyone else's input. Jerry had a friend his age, Mark, who grew up with him but wasn't nearly as lucky. A few years back, Mark fell from a construction site, shattered his spine, and ended up in a wheelchair for life. Sure, he got a hefty settlement that left him financially better off than most middle-class folks, but could he really feel happy? Money, to him, was just a string of cold digits in a bank account. It couldn't fix his broken nerves or let him run on the beach again. The inferiority from his disability was like an invisible, unbreakable cage, cutting him off from the world. Of course, those of us with working limbs can never truly get what he's going through. At the end of the day, we're all wrapped up in our own fragile, fleeting sense of happiness. But sometimes, in the dead of night, Jerry would think of Mark and feel a strange panic, like he was staring into some hollow truth about life. Jerry's downfall began when he stepped into Las Vegas, that neon-soaked desert oasis built on desire. At first, it was just a rich guy's pastime, a status symbol. Playing a few hands of Texas Hold'em with clients and friends at exclusive tables, betting anywhere from a few hundred to a few $1,000, felt like no big deal. Wins and losses didn't sting, it was more like social currency. Jerry loved the thrill of reading opponents with a glance or a twitch, feeling like a god controlling the table. The rush of winning was sharper, more immediate than closing a big real estate deal. It was pure, untainted victory. Soon, he wasn't satisfied with friendly games. He started flying solo to Vegas, drawn to high-stakes poker and baccarat tables in elite casinos. He lied to Isabella, calling them business trips. At first, luck was on his side. He'd win enough in a weekend to cover a car. He chalked it up to his smarts and guts, not random chance. He started believing he could beat the house, outsmart a system built on cold math and human weakness. That's the beginning of a gambler's ruin, when he stops seeing gambling as fun and starts treating it like a career to conquer. Then Jerry started losing. Small at first, a few grand here and there. He told himself it was just a blip, that he'd win it back next time. But next time brought bigger losses. He chased his losses, upping the stakes, his cool-headed judgment evaporating under the weight of bigger bets. He tapped into his company's cash flow, then their savings. He secretly mortgaged the downtown loft, and the cash from that vanished in a few nights. Isabella sensed something was off and pressed him about the money. He fed her lies, bad investments, a friend's betrayal. Their fights grew louder, more vicious. Their home, once a safe haven, turned into a war zone. The final straw was Jerry's parents' life savings. They'd entrusted him with the money they'd saved for retirement, asking him to manage it safely. But when Jerry was desperate, he shamefully dipped into it. He flew to Macau for an underground high-stakes game he had no business being in, dreaming of winning back everything and replacing the money before anyone noticed. It was a wild night, thick with cigar smoke and desperation. When the final card flipped, Jerry's world collapsed. He didn't just lose money. He lost his conscience as a son, his dignity as a man. When he called his father, trembling, to confess, the long silence on the other end broke him more than any shouting could. Back in LA, Isabella asked for a divorce. She sat across from him, her eyes empty of the love they once held, filled only with exhaustion and disappointment. "Jerry," she said, "the man I knew is dead. You're just a shell, eaten away by gambling." He couldn't argue, she was right. They split what little was left, and she took their daughter, Mia, and moved out. The beachfront villa, once alive with laughter, became an empty shell, just Jerry and his despair. It's been 2 years since Jerry quit gambling. That first year was the darkest, most painful of his life. The law didn't care about his remorse. Court orders piled up, freezing his bank accounts, Venmo, Cash App, everything overnight. It was like being banished to the Stone Age, scraping by on crumpled bills for a bottle of water. His assets, including the Santa Monica villa, were auctioned off to cover a fraction of his debts, which totaled over $700,000. The restrictions humiliated him, but they didn't break him completely. In the US, asset freezes and wage garnishments are harsh, but the system leaves room for negotiation. At first, Jerry ran. He changed his number, ignored debt collection emails, buried his head in the sand. But the calls found him, his parents' house, the front desk of the low-paying job he'd scraped together. The suffocating pressure nearly crushed him. Some nights, alone in a rented room with just a bed and a table, he'd hold a bottle of sleeping pills, wondering if ending it all was the only way out. But then he'd think of Mia, her bright eyes, her sweet voice calling him daddy. She was his only tether to the world, his reason to keep going. He couldn't leave her with a father who took the coward's way out. So he faced the mess he'd made. He tracked down every creditor, banks, credit card companies, friends he'd betrayed, and made the first call. The first call was brutal, anger, curses, as expected. Jerry didn't argue. He listened, let them vent, then apologized with a humility he didn't know he had. He laid out his finances, showed his meager pay stubs, and offered a repayment plan, small but doable. "I know I've got nothing now," he'd say, "but I've got 2 hands and decades ahead. I'll spend my life paying you back." At first, most thought it was another lie, a stalling tactic. But when he started sending those small, consistent payments every month, some softened. He struck formal deals with several creditors, some for a few $100 a month, others less. It gave them hope of seeing their money, and gave him a sliver of breathing room. Each call, each tiny step forward, was a flicker of light in a dark tunnel. People mess up, but they've got to fix it, not keep falling into the same pit. Jerry gambled away 2 houses, 2 cars, his parents' savings, and every ounce of trust his friends had. But hitting rock bottom, despised by everyone, forced him to stop and see his life from the outside. He started grappling with questions he'd never considered, about the meaning of happiness, the point of it all. In a strange way, this disaster wasn't all bad. It shattered his arrogant shell, letting him glimpse the fragile, real person inside. Running from debt was pointless, dodging it betrayed his conscience. The days of blowing cash in fancy restaurants or being the star of lavish parties never brought him peace. His mind was always racing with anxiety, terrified of losing the next deal or his spot at the top. Now his life is stripped down, and he's never felt calmer. He works a mundane clerical job at a small logistics company, processing forms and data for about $3,500 a month after taxes, barely enough to scrape by in LA. Luckily, despite his reckless past, he'd made a few real friends. One, Sam, didn't shun him like others did. Instead, he offered Jerry a weekend gig at his coffee shop, baking and serving customers, bringing in an extra $1,000 a month. That makes $4,500 total. He sends $2,800 of it to creditors via automatic bank transfers, per their agreements. The remaining $1,700 is all he has to reconnect with the world. Morally, he knows he should pour every cent into his debts, but he's human with needs and feelings. He doesn't smoke or drink, which saves money, but rent for a shabby studio in a rough neighborhood, basic food, transportation, and phone bills eat up $1,200. He squeezes out $500 to stash in a savings account, his last line of defense for emergencies. Jerry's learned that true success isn't about piling up wealth or status. At his lowest, he joined a gambling support group and met Julian, an older man who'd once been a successful businessman but lost everything to alcohol and family issues. Now a respected therapist, Julian told him, "Jerry, real success is taming the demon inside you. Your greed, your fear, your pride, the urges that keep you chasing cars, women, status, all that empty stuff." Those words hit like lightning. Jerry got it. He'd had everything, cars, houses, even partners he could swap out at will. But the thrill was fleeting, like fireworks fading into a deeper void. His heart was never still. He had to win every argument with Isabella, make excuses for every gambling loss, blaming the casino's design or the dealer's luck, like the world owed him, and he was always right. When he started facing creditors with calm, rational words, his mindset shifted. It wasn't easy. Gambling urges would slither up like a snake, whispering, "You're scraping by on pennies. Use your skills, win a small bet, just one, it'll make things easier." He'd catch himself, recognize it as a false signal from a brain wired for thrills, and call Julian or hit a support group meeting to fight it off. Julian's wisdom, drawn from Eastern philosophy, helped. All our emotions and actions come from how we interpret our thoughts. Thoughts aren't good or bad, they're just thoughts. But if you buy into them, they control you. Jerry was too easily swayed by unexamined impulses. A friend's debt collection text sparked fear and shame. Seeing Isabella's happy new family online triggered self-pitying thoughts like, if it weren't for me, she wouldn't be this happy. Those knee-jerk reactions were deadly, feeding a fragile, victim-playing ego. His gambling addiction thrived on those thoughts. Satisfying them brought brief joy, resisting them brought pain. But now he sees that voice isn't him. It's just a habit in his brain. By observing it without following it, he strips it of power, like a breeze that passes and fades. He's learned to tolerate insults and understand the hurt behind others' anger. A close friend, Carlos, lent him $100,000 for a second restaurant. When Jerry went broke, Carlos called daily, hurling every curse in the book. At first, Jerry was pissed, feeling betrayed. But Julian helped him see Carlos's anger was justified. Jerry hadn't just ruined his business plans but shattered years of trust. So Jerry stopped arguing. One weekend, he showed up at Carlos's Mexican restaurant and said, "I know no apology fixes this. I can't pay you back yet, but I've got strength. Let me work here for free, washing dishes, mopping floors, whatever, until I've earned back some of what I owe you." Carlos was stunned, watching this former hotshot in a cheap t-shirt beg to wash dishes. He stayed silent, then nodded. Every weekend, Jerry worked in the greasy, noisy kitchen for hours. It was grueling, but it felt grounding. His actions spoke louder than words. Months later, Carlos saw Jerry's change and believed he was trying to make things right. He agreed to a repayment plan of a few $100 a month and even got the court to unfreeze Jerry's payroll account for easier living. He realized driving Jerry to ruin helped no one. Isabella, still beautiful, barely touched by time, has remarried a wealthy lawyer and has a sweet son. Jerry's genuinely happy for her. She deserves stability. For Mia's sake, they meet once or twice a year for her birthday or Christmas. To keep things smooth, Jerry suggests she bring her husband, David. David loves flexing his superiority, picking up Mia in his Porsche Cayenne or asking at dinner, "Jerry, what's your salary now? Logistics sounds tough. Want me to hook you up with something easier?" It's a jab to embarrass him. Early on, Jerry's cheeks burned, his pride crushed, fists clenched to bite back a retort. But after some late-night reflection, he realized it didn't matter what David said or did. Jerry's own fragility and resentment were what made it hurt. Regretting the unchangeable past, fretting over an uncertain future, or crumbling at a slight, these were poisons he fed himself. Happiness can be simple. When Jerry stops the what-if and why-me thoughts, he's free. At Mia's last birthday party, David took another smug shot at his job. Jerry just smiled and said, "Thanks for the concern, but my work feels solid. Plus, I get more time with Mia." His calm threw David off, shutting down the game. Jerry felt a freedom he'd never known. The things Jerry lost were never truly his, so he didn't really lose them. Houses, cars, savings, they just fed his desires more efficiently, more lavishly. They couldn't stop aging, sickness, or death. They were props for playing successful guy. The show flopped, the props were repossessed, and now Jerry's just Jerry. He's dirt poor but clearer inside than ever. No more juggling a dozen projects or scheming. His life's simple, focus on one thing at a time. Work on data at his job, bake at the coffee shop, be fully present with Mia. He doesn't dwell on past glories or failures or fret over debts that seem endless. Doing what's in front of him makes him feel lighter than ever. When he needs a break, he hikes Griffith Park, spending half a day to reach the top, looking out over LA, feeling small yet part of something vast. When he misses Mia, he takes a long bus ride to her upscale neighborhood and spends hours with her in the park. He can't afford fancy Lego sets or gadgets, but $20 buys a bag of her favorite snacks and a sci-fi comic, and she still leaps into his arms. He takes her to Santa Monica Pier to watch the sunset, spinning stories about the clouds, or to the lake to feed ducks, teaching her kindness to all life. When they see a homeless person, he hands Mia a few bucks to give them, telling her to stay compassionate, even when they have little. Mia's bright, inheriting her mom's beauty and Jerry's wit. She seems untouched by her parents' divorce or his fall. Her kindergarten teachers adore her, calling her helpful and imaginative. Jerry's parents, after their initial pain, forgave him. In their 60s and healthy, they video call weekly, never asking about debts, only if he's eating well or overworked. Jerry believes good deeds yield good outcomes. Mistakes demand repentance and action. With time and effort, the debts will clear, and life will find its way.